My little child, remember, when you feel weak and weary, I am here to lift you up. Just like the time when I encountered a man who had been sick for 38 years, lying beside a pool in Bethesda. I asked him, "Do you want to get well?" And with his faith in my words, he was healed instantly. It shows that faith in me can bring about miraculous changes in your life. Imagine a time when everything seems impossible, like when a father came to me, desperate for his son's healing. The boy was suffering greatly, but with just a few words, I restored him to full health. This miracle teaches us that no matter how tough things seem, there's always hope and faith. Do you recall the story of the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years? She had tried everything but found no cure. Then, she touched the hem of my garment, believing that it would heal her. And it did. Her faith made her well. This shows that sometimes, all it takes is a small act of faith to see big changes in your life. Think about the blind man at Bethsaida. He couldn't see anything, but he believed that I could restore his sight. After I put mud on his eyes and told him to wash in the pool of Siloam, he came back seeing. It's a lesson that sometimes, following simple instructions can lead to miraculous outcomes. And then there was the leper who came to me, begging to be healed. I was moved with compassion and touched him, something no one else would do. Immediately, he was cleansed of his leprosy. This teaches us about the power of compassion and how it can bring healing. In Matthew 8 verses 2-3, it says, "A leper came to him and begged him on his knees, 'If you are willing, you can make me clean.' Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. 'I am willing,' he said. 'Be clean.' Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. My precious child, just as I was willing to heal the leper, I am willing to heal you. Your faith in me is the key. Consider the time when I healed a man with a withered hand. Some people were watching to see if I would heal on the Sabbath, so they could accuse me. But I asked the man to stretch out his hand and it was restored. This teaches us that healing and goodness should not be bound by time or place. There was also the centurion who came to me on behalf of his servant. He had great faith, saying that I only needed to say the word and his servant would be healed. And so it was. His faith was so strong that it brought about healing from afar. Do not forget the story of Jairus' daughter. Jairus, a synagogue leader, came to me in despair because his daughter was dying. While we were on the way to his house, she passed away. But when I reached her, I simply said, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And she did. This miracle shows that it's never too late for a miracle. In Mark 5 verses 41-42, it reads, "He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. My child, even when situations seem beyond hope, remember that with faith, nothing is impossible. Now, think about the 10 lepers who stood at a distance, calling out for mercy. I saw their faith and told them to go show themselves to the priests. As they went, they were cleansed. This story tells us that sometimes, we need to take a step of faith before we see the result of our prayers. The story of the paralyzed man brought to me on a mat by his friends is another powerful example. They couldn't get through the crowd, so they made a hole in the roof and lowered him down. Seeing their faith, I forgave his sins and healed him. This teaches that sometimes, the faith of others can bring about our healing. Remember the time when I was on my way to Jairus' house and a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years touched my cloak? She believed that if she could just touch my clothes, she would be healed. And she was right. Her faith, though quiet, was powerful enough to draw healing from me. In Luke 8 verses 47-48, it says, "Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then I said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." My little child, just like this woman, your quiet faith in me can bring about great changes in your life. Consider the blind Bartimaeus, who sat by the roadside, calling out to me for mercy. Many told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more. I called him over and asked what he wanted me to do for him. His request for sight was granted because of his persistent faith. Then there's the story of the deaf and mute man brought to me in the Decapolis. People begged me to place my hand on him. After taking him aside and putting my fingers in his ears and touching his tongue, I said Ephphatha, which means be opened. His ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he spoke plainly. This teaches us about the power of specific prayer and direct action. My precious child, remember, when you come to me with your needs, believe that I can and will act on your behalf. Just like these people in the Bible, your faith can make you whole. Now, let's reflect on the man with the demon-possessed son. He said to me, "If you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." I replied, "Everything is possible for one who believes." Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief." And the boy was healed. This story teaches us about the importance of honest faith, even when mixed with doubts. In Mark 9 verses 23 to 24, it is written, "If you can," said Jesus, "everything is possible for one who believes." Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief." My child, even when doubts cloud your mind, remember that a sincere heart and faith in me can bring about healing and miracles. Think about the paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda. He had been there for 38 years, waiting for someone to help him into the water when it was stirred. When I saw him lying there and learned of his condition, I asked him, "Do you want to get well?" His response led to his healing. This shows that sometimes, acknowledging our need and desire to be healed is the first step towards recovery. Remember the story of Lazarus, who had died and been in the tomb for 4 days. When I arrived, I said, "Lazarus, come out." And he came out, alive again. This miracle teaches that even in situations that seem completely lost, I can bring life and restoration. In John 11 verses 43 to 44, it reads, "When I had said this, I called in a loud voice, 'Lazarus, come out.' The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Then I said to them, 'Take off the grave clothes and let him go.'" My little child, always remember, no matter how dark the situation, I can bring light and life into it. Consider the man born blind whom I healed. I made some mud with saliva, put it on his eyes, and told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. He went and washed, and came home seeing. This teaches us that sometimes, healing comes through simple acts of obedience. The story of the Syrophoenician woman's daughter is also a lesson in persistence and faith. The woman came to me, asking me to drive the demon out of her daughter. At first, it seemed like I wasn't going to help her, but her faith and persistence moved me, and her daughter was healed. This shows that sometimes, we need to persist in our faith, even when things don't seem to be going our way. And then there was the time when I healed a man who was mute and demon-possessed. Once the demon was driven out, the man spoke, and the crowd was amazed. This teaches us that sometimes, what seems impossible to us is entirely possible with faith. In Luke 11 verse 14, it is written, "I was driving out a demon that was mute." When the demon left, the man who had been mute spoke, and the crowd was amazed. My precious child, always believe that I can do the impossible in your life. Remember the story of the man with dropsy, whom I healed on the Sabbath. Some of the Pharisees and experts in the law were looking for a reason to accuse me, but I asked them, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Then, I healed the man and sent him away. This teaches us that compassion and helping others should always come first. There was also a time, in Luke 5 verses 17 to 26, where friends of a paralyzed man couldn't get through the crowd to see me. So, they got creative and lowered him through the roof. Their faith and determination were so strong that I healed him on the spot. It's a reminder that when things seem impossible, there's always a way if you believe and don't give up. In Matthew 8 verses 1 to 4, a man with leprosy came to me. Back then, people with leprosy were avoided and alone. But he was brave and asked for healing. I reached out, touched him, and immediately he was healed. This story tells us that no matter how lonely or scared you feel, I am always here to touch and heal your life. Another wonderful moment was with a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, as told in Luke 8 verses 43 to 48. She had tried everything to get better, but nothing worked. Then, she touched the edge of my cloak and instantly, her bleeding stopped. Her faith alone made her well. This teaches us that sometimes, just a small act of faith can bring a big change. Let's not forget the time in Mark 5 verses 21 to 43 when Jairus, a synagogue leader, came to me because his daughter was dying. While I was on my way, someone said his daughter had already died. But I told him, don't be afraid, just believe. And guess what? His daughter was brought back to life. This amazing event shows that even when hope seems lost, believing can bring miracles. My dear child, I know the struggles and the pain you might be facing. Remember, in your moments of discomfort and distress, I am always with you. I understand your suffering, and my heart is moved with compassion. There were times when I walked the earth, and people came to me, burdened with various ailments. Just like the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. She believed that if she could just touch my clothes, she would be healed. And you know what? Her faith made her well. It's your faith, your trust in me, that activates my power in your life. Sometimes, you might feel like your situation is impossible. But think about Jairus' daughter. She was very sick, to the point that she passed away. Yet, when I arrived, I simply took her by the hand and said, Talitha koum, which means little girl, I say to you, get up. And she did. Even in the most hopeless situations, I can bring restoration and life. Remember, healing isn't just about your physical body. It's also about your heart and soul. Once, there was a man who couldn't walk, and his friends brought him to me. Seeing their faith, I first forgave his sins before healing his body. I care for all aspects of your being. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 35 to 36, it says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Just like then, I see your struggles now. I feel deep compassion for your situation. I haven't changed. I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. There might be times when you feel all alone in your pain. But think of the leper who came to me, begging to be healed. Leprosy was not just a disease, it made him an outcast in society. Yet, I reached out and touched him, something no one else would do. I am willing to touch your life, to enter into your pain and bring healing. Your faith is powerful. Remember the centurion who came to me on behalf of his servant? He had such great faith that he believed I could heal his servant without even being physically present. And it happened just as he believed. Your faith in me, no matter where you are, can bring about the change you need. Healing can come in many forms. Sometimes it's immediate, other times it's a process. But know this, I am with you through it all. I am your comforter, your healer, your friend. Do not be disheartened if you don't see instant results. Healing is not only about the physical. It's also about growing in faith, hope, and love. As you trust in me, let your heart be filled with peace. Remember, in the Gospel of Luke, a paralyzed man was brought to me on a mat. The house was so crowded that his friends had to lower him through the roof. Seeing their faith, I forgave his sins and healed him. Your faith, combined with the support of those around you, is powerful. In your journey towards healing, don't forget to celebrate the small victories. Each step forward is a testament to my work in your life. And when you face setbacks, remember, they are not the end. I am with you, guiding and supporting you. Lean on me, and find strength in my presence. Lastly, my precious child, know that your journey, including your struggles, is a testimony of my love and power. Share your story, encourage others, and let your life be a light that points to me. Remember, I am always here, loving you, healing you, guiding you. Trust in me, and let your heart be at peace. Listen to my word day and night over and over again. My healing comes surely, but it needs your faith. And faith comes by hearing my word. You are blessed, my child.